Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our Q&A webinar. Good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are located. So as I mentioned, this is our weekly Q&A. So with that being said, you're definitely going to want to submit your questions for today's accounting Q&A webinar. So a little bit about our presenter, our outside consultant partner, Julia Nikishina, about her firm, bookkeeping and accounting support, including CFO services for large and small businesses. They specialize in unique and complex accounting needs of interior design firms and showrooms, with comprehensive procurement services for designers and showrooms. So as I mentioned, this is a Q&A webinar, so please feel free at any time during the hour, put in your questions. We're going to get to as many questions as we possibly can for today's hour. All right, so I'm going to switch this over now to Julia's screen, and she's going to kick this off for us. Okay, great. Julia, I do see your screen now, Studio Designer.
Oh, perfect. Hi, Sarah. How are you?
I'm good. How are you today, Julia?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. Just as a reminder, like Sarah had mentioned, please submit your questions in the question box, and I will get through as many questions as I can in the hour. So we already have quite a few questions, so I'm just going to start it off from the top. In the items screen, so items, can you filter by vendor and also select multiple projects? I have been able to only do one project or all projects. And so yes, that would be the case, but I'm assuming that when you say projects, you actually mean also clients, because projects are a subdivision of a client. So if you had in your setup multiple projects set up and they were all linked to one client, so this client related Kilroy, if you searched by the client Kilroy, all of the sub projects under Kilroy would pop up. But again, that's assuming that the setup of the project versus the client it is correct. But let's give this a try. So here's Kilroy. Kilroy is the client, and then we're back to projects, and Jardine is the project. So if you type in here, so we're in my favorite, First Dibs. Kilroy doesn't have anything under First Dibs. Let's see. Kilroy doesn't have anything. Let's go to item list and go to, and Jardine doesn't have anything either. But just to note, that is how it would work if you had projects that were a subset of a client. Next question. Is there a way to customize a view of items? So no, that's actually a great question, and it's interesting. When I go to items, let's go to my 19th Street, which I believe is where we were working on last time. I really like the classic version. I like this version a lot, and I also flip-flop a lot in item lists. But at the moment, everything does default to item details this way. I know they've been coming out with several new releases. You're now able to select a proposal as a default instead of just having a custom proposal be the default. So I'm sure that that's something that is in the queue, and we could certainly talk to Sarah about it at the end of the call. If you change the project for an item after creating the PO, does the PO update? So you actually wouldn't be able to. So let's try to find a purchase order without an invoice. This is damaged returning. So where are we here? As soon as you damaged returning, here's our PO. So if you go into this item, the PO was already made. You cannot change the client and you cannot change the vendor. This purchase order is tied in the system to this vendor and this client. You would have to void this whole order, and before you void the order, if it has a payment on it, you would have to take the money off of the order, void the order, and then once you void the order, 19th Street pops up. So let's actually do that. And this order is a good order to void because it doesn't have a payment on it. So if it did have a payment, like I said, you'd have to take the payment off. So let's go back into the actual order, damaged returning. So as soon as I void this order, go back into that item, my vendor opened up, but my client, my project is still selected because that's tied to the proposal. So you would have to take this item off of the proposal as well. And actually, I believe this was one of our refunds that we did last week. So let's go to 19th Street. Let's put this money back into client deposit. Remember, you could always open up a new tab by right-clicking. So we're only owed $210 on this item. I would have to take off the whole amount if I'm going to move it to a new project, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to put it back in their client funds, which was, remember, payment method. Apply payment to items from funds available. I always like to notate it with today's date and CDP, which stands for client deposit payment. You could do CFA, which is client funds available. So I move that over here. I go back into my items screen. I'm going to refresh it. It shows that there isn't any payment on here, and I'm going to just exit off of the proposal. I'm going to hit save, and now right here is where the client opened back up. So here's where I would say, okay, well, it's no longer, this isn't going to 19th Street anymore, and we're going to sell it to the Bellagio 3. We're actually going to take off the note damage returning because let's say our test antique lamp got fixed, and we're going to move it to the new client. And now it's gone here. Next question, if you update a PO, how do you alert the vendor you are sending an updated PO? The way I correspond with vendors is I save the order to my desktop and I send everything via email. So let's just get out of here. So I save orders as a PDF. And I like to hyperlink any credit card authorizations. That's returned. That's a test. Wine glasses. So I like to hyperlink all of my images and attachments here. I like to say visible to vendor. So if there's a credit card authorization form or if there was an original order acknowledgement, I send that all to them through one PDF. So I go to save and close. Here's my purchase order. I save it. My pixels, I like them to be small. So I would save this and then I would email the vendor the updated purchase order. I like to communicate via purchase orders a lot. I think I'm protecting myself against any issues with the vendor in terms of specification errors. So I always make sure that we generate an order. So even if it's for somebody like Pottery Barn, where they're not necessarily receiving the order via email, I'm still generating the order so that I could double check the spec before placing the order through any type of web portal or system. Let's exit out of there. This is actually a great question. We've had this come up before a lot. How do you account for cashback rewards on a credit card? So I would actually say it depends on how you receive them. So on American Express, for example, they'll credit you travel directly on the statement. So you may charge something for your airline ticket for $1,000, and then the statement will have a reward that says, minus $1,000 at the top, so that money isn't owed. In that type of scenario, I post that back to the actual expense itself. So I would do it through accounting money out. We actually have an American Express. And so let's do 2 of these. We have 2 office payments. They were unrelated to anything regarding a client. I'm going to set up American Airlines. At the moment, that's all I'm doing, American Airlines. On my American Express, it was Amex AM. It was, 10:01:22. So this is flight to Mexico, and I'm posting it to travel. That was $1,000. On that same statement, I also received a refund or a credit back for the travel because I redeemed American Express points. So I'm going to do save and new. I'm going to do AA. I'm going to do manual. I'm going to do AM. And it was the next day, and I'm trying to reconcile my October statement. AA travel points redeemed. And travel, and this would be a negative. They're also save and close. Remember, we have to post them, so now they're all, only one is in here. Oh, I wonder if it went into Citizens Bank. So if you're getting actual cash, I would actually ask is that cash coming into the business? Is that cash being made out as a check to you personally? So that would dictate how you should receive it in a way. But if it is a cashback check that's being made out to the business, you have to take it in as income. Let's just change this right now. And you could do that through money in or through a journal entry. We could do both. So save and close, go back to Amex, and my net should be 0. But here's my $1,000 flight, and here is my redemption. I'm going to post. If you received a cashback check, go to accounting, go to money in. Let's assume it's from American Express. So I want to do add. Nope. I don't want to do add new. I want to go to my magnifying glass because the received from dropdown is only clients. That's what populates into this screen first. So if you need a vendor, you would want to go to your magnifying glass. So go to your magnifying glass, find Amex, no American Express. Let's add one. Don't want to add a project. Write American Express. Save and select. This name is already in use. Would you like to save your changes? No. But I tried to find you. Oh, there we go. Select. So American Express sent me a large travel rewards, a large cashback, and it was $5,492. The payment methods up here, if we recall, the first 3 are always linked to clients: apply payment to items, receive and apply, and receive client payment. And the last one, receive miscellaneous payment, is for something such as a refund, whether it be a refund from your utility vendor, a refund from Verizon Wireless, or a refund from your credit card company. And as soon as you select receive miscellaneous payment, your income account right here has a little orange-red message, which is sometimes hard to see. And it says, please enter a valid value for your income account. Because you're telling the system you're receiving some miscellaneous funds. So I'm going to deposit this American Express refund into my Citizens Bank. and I need to find an income account associated with it. So I'm not as familiar with our chart of accounts. So what is in here as miscellaneous income? And I have one, income miscellaneous. Now, if you didn't have one, we could go through the steps of setting that up in your chart of accounts. My check number is 987654. My payment method is a check. It's getting deposited into my cash account. I'm telling the general ledger it's from American Express. In the description, I'm going to say cash back rewards. So this is increasing my income statement because this is showing that you received additional revenue. And I'm going to hit post payment. And it says, well done, my payment was posted. And if you wanted to double check, let's say you weren't sure where that went, you could always go into accounting, into general ledger. So income miscellaneous right here, you probably don't have too much activity in there. So if you sort, you'll be able to see everything that's been posted to income miscellaneous. We actually have a lot of activity in there. But here's my top ledger line item. Amex, there's my check, and it's my cashback rewards. And that did increase my income statement by $54.92. If you don't have income miscellaneous, you should set up something similar to that. And you would do that under settings in chart of accounts. And you'd scroll down until you saw your income section. And these sales ones, the ones on top that say sales, income, sales, antique, sales, furniture, these are usually linked, or they should be linked, to your sales codes. So there's sales, income, sales, antiques, and at the same time, there's cost of sales, antiques, also cost of sales, furniture. Because with every sales account, there should be a cost of sales account. Then you have some of your miscellaneous incomes right here. So income freight, income crating, reimbursables, interest, and miscellaneous. So if you didn't have a miscellaneous, I would scroll down until you see this income section, and then I would follow along the numbers. So the numbers matter. Studio does assign reference numbers to all of the accounts in your chart of accounts. That they do follow GAAP principles for that reason. And let's say we didn't have income miscellaneous and our last account was income interest. I would go by the next account number. So you could make it 4311. You could do the same thing like they did here, 4320. So go up here, click on add new account. You're going to say income, we're going to call it Miss, just to make the name different. I said 4321. We're setting up an income account. We're doing income miscellaneous. We don't need a department, and we're not setting up a sub account. And just double check, scroll down, and here it is. So make sure when you're doing something like that as a cashback, you're not posting it, for example, to sales furniture, because that will screw your income statement as well. But that's a great question, for sure. Next question. Can I attach a source document to money out, or must this be saved exterior of the system? So actually, this is a relatively new update as well. So if you go to projects and sort by vendor, you can now attach documentation to vendor IDs. And so that's right here. So I'm in for a Stibs, my all-time favorite. And here's images and attachments. I think it would depend on what you're trying to save. So we recommend, and what we try to do for all of our clients, is to upload all the W-9s to images and attachments. Any insurance certificates, I would upload to images and attachments. Let's say a vendor has specific wiring instructions. That would get uploaded to images and attachments. You can certainly upload some bills. You could certainly upload some receipts. I'm not quite sure of the organization of that and if that would make sense. I think it just depends on the size of your firm and how you like to see your documents. But again, keep in mind that images and attachments now attach to vendor IDs, and that is definitely helpful. Next question. So I thought you could change the project for items. Let's say you purchased something, a client decided they didn't like it. But it depends on what stage of the item process the item is in. So for example, let's go to items. go to item detail. Actually, let's go to item list. So here is, it looks like a test item for custom furniture. If you click on the edit pencil button, it is not associated with a proposal, an order, or an invoice. So at the moment, this box, client project, is, and I say it's open, right? It's not grayed out. You can still select the drop down and move this item. But as soon as you start putting an item on a proposal, the client project box gets grayed out, that you lose the drop down of changing the location. And as soon as you put it on an order, the vendor gets grayed out as well. So it just depends on where you are in the item stage. Custom furniture, we're going to make this custom sectional. Custom sectional. 9-foot sectional in dark gray velvet. There we go. So save and close. Preparing for year end. Yes, crazy, right? Only three months away. What do I do to make sure I have all of my needed vendors have a W-9 recorded in Studio? So I would say, it depends, right? Depends on how you manage the information. So let's go to vendors. And first dibs. So every vendor under codes has this section, this drop down that says 1099 yes and the federal ID number. So the way I like to manage vendors is, good rule of thumb, always, whenever you have a new vendor that you're entering into Studio, you should be asking that vendor for a W-9. If that W-9 comes back and they are an C corporation and they do not need a 1099, I like to be in the habit of going into here, so going into vendors codes, and putting in no, and putting in my EIN. Because I know that is a checkpoint for myself. That means I asked for the W-9, I received the EIN, and I put in 1099 no. If I just start putting in 1099 no, my memory may not serve me correctly. And maybe I assumed they were a no and I went in and put in no. But it helps jog my memory and to manage all of our client data files if I enter the EIN and then put in yes or no. Now remember, if you are going to Pottery Barn, you are not asking them for a W-9. If you are going to 7-Eleven or Verizon, you are not asking them for a W-9. So you're asking for W-9s from your vendors that provide any type of labor, and anyone that's more on the smaller scale, you would be asking them for a W-9 as well. I always tell people, rather be safe than sorry. IRS can fine you for every 1099 that you don't send. Is that typical for them? I would say no. But they do make it very, very clear. I mean, this is a way for the IRS to track down income. So I would always prefer to oversend 1099s than to undersend. So, okay, so here are my boxes. This is how I manage the information. Now that this is an option, all of our W-9s are getting uploaded here. And then we want to go to reports, and we want to start generating some reports regarding 1099s. So go to all reports and then start typing in 1099. And you'll receive a plethora of information as to how you want to search for that data. Remember, as of last year, actually not 2 years ago, 1099 NEC came about. So now you need to send two 1099 NEC and 1099 MIS forms, both available from the IRS. You could also file them both electronically. And I really like to see, and I just like to generate a report to get an idea of, well, what did I pay my vendors? So sometimes I'll actually just do a vendor disbursement. Like, I just like to see cash disbursement so I could understand, okay, well, who did I pay? And then I would go in to see. I'll go in and I'll filter. Oh, I can filter, I guess, already this year, because the majority of this year is over. Let me do it to today. Oops. So first dibs, A Custom Furniture, Mr. George. And this will tell me too, what do I have for them? Oh, you know what? I didn't mention this because this has been newer the last couple of years. We are now actually sending all of our 1099s electronically. So when I export the document from Studio for the 1099s that I need to process, it's very helpful if the vendor email is in this file. So when you go back into, so here I'm setting up my address. Codes is where the EIN and the yes or no go. I really like to, under address, make sure that their email is here, because then when it's exported, it's really easy for me to put it into the 1099 tracker online. So, and here's all of my EINs. So go back to reports here. I usually start here. I mean, and this is just me. This is my double check. I like to get an idea of, well, who did I pay? Who did I not pay? Now, remember, this is going to capture credit card transactions as well. But at least I'll know my volume for the year. I'll get a sense of, okay, we work in so many data files. So sometimes it's helpful to me to know, oh, right, this person works with AA Custom Furniture. I need to make sure I have a W-9 on file for them. Rose Tarlo, right? So I have a sense of, and then I work backwards. And then I say, okay, well, who do I typically pay by check? Who do I typically pay by credit card? Remember, your credit card companies are issuing their own 1099s. So if you pay somebody with your American Express, before that vendor, so let's use our AA Custom Furniture. Let's say AA Custom Furniture is taking credit cards. That means that they gave all of their corporate information to American Express to take that payment. So when you're paying with the credit card vendors themselves are issuing 1099s. Let's go back to reports. Let's go back to 1099. So, and look, the Studio did a great job in helping us identify. This is telling me all payment types. So this means that this disbursement detail is going to give us information regardless of how I paid. This type of report is going to filter it out by my cash account, which is what I want. I only want to see how much I paid somebody when it was out of my cash account directly. I'm having a hard time understanding that it's 2022. First dibs, Babe Ruth, landlord, Zazu. Zazu sounds really fun, and I'd like to know what they are. So anyway, so this is definitely a great starting point. Please remember to be proactive about these. They're due at the end of January. However, some of our vendors, as I'm sure we all know, are much better at sending you W-9s than others. And just good rule of thumb, good year-end close procedure. Come fourth quarter, check in, run these reports, get a sense of who owes you a W-9. Reach out to that vendor, send them a W-9 in hopes of them sending it back to you very, very quickly. But that's definitely a great question. Okay, next question. Can you go through the steps of returning a client retainer at the end of a project? Yes. So I think we talked about this a little bit last time. Let's go to accounting, money in. Let's go to our favorite, 19th Street. They have a ton of money on account right now. And let's assume they sent us that $500,000 check a little bit ago. Let's assume that we're not returning all of their funds, and they are still doing work with us, but they want to make sure that their funds available account is only $500,000 and not this other miscellaneous $12,000. So this process would differ a little bit if you are if you need to print them an actual check, or if you're just going to send them a bill pay, let's say through your bank. Let's do the latter, and we're going to send them a bill pay through our bank. So all we're trying to do in our ledger is to show that we're reducing here, reducing funds available, and reducing our cash, because that's the debit and the credit associated with that. So we're in 19th Street. Remember payment methods, right? So receive and apply is when we're receiving money into this cash account, and we're applying it down here. We're not doing that. Apply payment is when we're moving money around below in these amount to apply boxes all down below. And the last one when it comes to clients is receive client payment. So receive client payment is usually a positive. So just make note, right? Everything down here, it went away. And that's because we're not applying it to any items. So if you're receiving it, typically this would be a positive number. They're sending us $10,000. We're attributing it to our Citizens Bank account, and it would increase funds available. If you're trying to decrease funds available, you could use the same screen, but this would actually just be a negative. So this is minus $12,270. I like to be specific. I'm going to use the description. Refunding client funds per their request. Whenever I'm moving money in and out of funds available, and for those of you who have listened to any of my webinars, I'm sure I sound like a broken record, but I think it's very important to notate here, to put something into this check number. So in the desktop days, funds available was called client deposit. So I, to this day, whenever I move money around, I still use CDP, client deposit payment, and I'll use today's date. And then I could see this in the general ledger. I could filter by CDP. I could see CDP in my client payment application report and in my general ledger. So to me, it's very, very helpful. So I would actually, again, so I notated my check number right here. My amount is right here. I'm removing $12,270 from funds available. And I help myself with this description, refunding clients per their request. So when I hit post payment, watch here, and then we'll go into the general ledger to see what happened as well. So funds available went down. So even though money in is typically for deposits, when you put a negative dollar value in this amount box, it reduces your cash. And because we selected receive client payment, it reduced their funds available. But you could also go ahead and double check this right here. So we're in Citizens Bank. And the debits and credits may be confusing, but the minus right here should make sense. So here's Citizens Bank, and instead of being a positive number, here's my note, refund client funds available, and it's a minus coming out of the bank. And if we compare to the other general ledger activity today or yesterday, we put in our cashback rewards, and that was a positive number right here. So this negative number is doing the same thing. If you are, and we could let's go back, right? This is our friend Tom Hanks, who has a lot of money in here. But for some reason, he called us again and said, "Please send me another $1,000." If you needed to print this actual check, I would print it through suspense. It's one extra step, but I prefer to do it this way. I think it makes things a little bit cleaner. And then I'm actually using money out and tying it to suspense, and then money in it and tying it to suspense. So I'll actually show you. So if you're printing an actual check, add in the extra step of tying it through suspense. Your payment method would be receive and apply. I'm actually, no, it would not. It would be receive client payment, because we're not applying it to items. But the difference is I'm actually not, in this step, I'm not taking it out of cash. I'm just taking it out of suspense. So I'm putting in $1,000. You wanted another $1,000. I don't know why. Same client deposit payment, today's date. And so the $1,000 is coming out of funds available, and it's going into the cash account suspense. And I hit post payment. Let's make sure it updated appropriately. And there's my $4.99. But now I need to actually write them a check, and I actually want to print them a check because that's what he requested. So I go, actually I'm going to keep my general ledger open. I'm going to go into accounting, going to select money out, office payment, 19th Street is my pay to, Citizens Bank. So I'm going to have this check be printed. I'd like it to be printed. And returning, refunding. Here's where it may get a little bit confusing. Your expense account will need to say suspense. Because remember, in money in, we didn't attribute it to a cash account. We attributed it to suspense. So we need to make sure the debit and the credit come out of suspense. I know this step is, like I said, it's a little bit of an extra step. I know it could be confusing. And then we could double check it in our general ledger. So it's $1,000. We're printing it. We're putting it in our print screen, save and close. Let's change this view to, always amazes me how many cash accounts we have. Oh, whoa. Oh, there's so many checks to print. I really want to print this $1,000 because I need to see the debit and the credit. Okay, we're going to print all of these. Our next check is 1091, sure. Print checks. Check form. Sure. I always preview, and then I always batch print too, which I know a lot of people, some people do, some people don't. I'd like to see what's going on in here. Deposit for Christmas party. That was us last week. So if you see, here's my $1,000 refund going back to Tim and Rita. But because I did it through money out and because I selected the client name, the client information is already filled in my client ID. So then when this populates into my print screen, this all looks correct, right? And when it gets printed, it'll actually look really nice for them also. So I'm going to pretend that I printed it. We should be good. Once I did that, these should go to our printed column. I will hit post printed. And let's assume you were taking really good notes and you just wanted to double check on your end that everything posted correctly. Go into your general ledger. That'll be the easiest way to find it. So into the accounts right here into this box, right? Put suspense. And then you'll see your debit and your credit. This is the trick to knowing that the money came in and went out of suspense. And then again, just double check your money in screen. Go to the client that you're trying to move money around or refunding money from and make sure the funds available is $4.99 too. So you could do one more step by going to reports. I love the payment application report. We're actually looking at something earlier today for a client, but this will tell you to any movement that occurred with money tied to them. And I know we had a lot in there today, even. So if you scroll all the way down, you'll be able to see, oh, right, I gave her back money. Oh, right, I gave them back more money. Oh, and right, we actually put this in here because we had to move that item into another project. So this would be, again, sort of your last step to double check. But speaking of projects, this question came in earlier. So there is no right or wrong in terms of selecting client or project or deciding if you should have one client with multiple projects. Depends on how you do reports, depends on how you communicate with clients. I think there's a lot of scenarios where it actually makes a lot of sense. And we should be able to play with these people and assign them a client and then a project. So if you have somebody with multiple homes, this is a great way to keep it organized, yet for yourself or even for the client, be able to very quickly look at total spend, total vendor, for example, costs, your margin across all of their projects, and very easily as well. So you would start off by setting up one main client and then adding on secondary projects. I want to copy their funny name. I did not spell that right. And so they live at 123 Main Street. Sure, let's put them in Edison, New Jersey. And so they're the main client. So where it gets, I think, tricky, especially if you're in a bigger office and then some of the designers maybe forgot that this client has multiple projects, is that a client, when they have projects underneath them, I don't like items to be tied to the main client. I like to make sure that all items are tied to a project, and their projects would be their different homes. So here's I didn't fill out any of their information. Well, this is defaulted. Okay. So save and new. Oops. Oh yeah, New Jersey. Oh, New Jersey is in here. Great. We have a resale. Remember, always double check your budget costs. Especially now after Wayfair sued South Dakota, it is really important to note how much money you're spending in the different states per year to understand if you need a resale. So that's always one of our questions. We ask for our clients that we set up their client IDs for the most part. Depends on the size of the firm. And that's where I would ask that question. Well, what does the client spend and how long is the estimated project? Because that'll dictate the resale answer, the resale certificate answer. So if you go to save, where are we? What happened to our friends? Per page, I know people request this all the time too. Is there any way to default the per page? I wish I could tell you what I named them because I'm losing where I thought they were Hank. Tom? Hank? Honk? Oh, so now they're a client. So, and I'd like to set them up with multiple homes. So I'm going to go to new address and I'm going to say they have a home in the Bahamas. And they are now a project, and I'm going to say that it's still these people. Bahama. Oh, that's really funny. That'd be funny if they lived in Bahama Breeze. 123 Bahama Way in the Bahamas, in North Carolina. Also funny. Okay, so under codes, though, this is the important part. So go to codes, and this is where you would need to link them. So related client, and that would be, that would be here. So Hank Walson was set up as a client, and now we're setting up all of their related projects. And again, we're doing that for budgetary purposes, for reporting purposes. So here is where I would select the related client, and here's my sidebar. All right, and then we're out of state. Save. And actually, this is a great example because 19th Street now needs to become a project, and you can change it. And the way we would do that actually is right here, but then I'm going to run a report so you could see what it looks like also. So this would become a project, and this code's right here. This would become a related client. So save. Let's go to reports, and let's just go to our project worksheet report. All-time favorite. And so if your client, and that would relate, we had an earlier question about project clients and filters. So if you were to filter by 19th Street, you can still. So 19th Street will pop up, and it'll give you only the items, the project cost, the total spend related with 19th Street. However, if you type in, if you filter by Hank Walson, all of the projects related to Hank Walson will pop up. So at the moment, this is only 19th Street. But see right here where you have the client ID as Hank Walson, but 19th Street came up, it popped up, and that's because of the setup. So can you just as easily, for example, go to client ID is in and add in 19th Street, little plus sign, Bahamas, little plus sign. You can. But I think it just, again, it depends on how you're running these reports for clients and how you're managing the client reports directly, and how you're, meaning what type of reports you're sending to your clients also. So, but no right or wrong, I think, really. Jane, this is actually a great question. My client is in a different state. I don't send sales tax to the state or have a permit there. When the vendor charges me sales tax, should I charge our client the tax under other? I don't want the tax collected to go on the monthly sales tax report. Yes, in that particular example, you would. You can break it out under other. A lot of times we actually throw it into into the cost of the item. We're in 19th Street still, item details. Because it's just the cost of doing business. But I will tell you to do your due diligence in terms of learning about economic nexus and the thresholds. So the different states are cracking down. They have been now for several years. I know I talk about Wayfair versus South Dakota often. And I should probably look up to see when that was, because I always say it wasn't that long ago, but I think it actually has now probably been about 4 or 5 years. So since that point, all of the states came out with public lists of what their different thresholds are for doing businesses in those states. Well, let's go to an item. Hopefully we could find one that's not on an invoice. Test chair. That looks like a table. So where are we? We're in 19th Street. 19th Street is not out of state. Oh, they're in Florida, right? But if I didn't have a resale in Florida and this vendor charged me sales tax, you couldn't put it in sales tax box 1. Sales tax box 1 populates onto your sales tax report, like you mentioned. I would prefer, and again, this is personal preference, I just think it looks a little better. I would prefer to throw it into here, into the unit cost. But you can absolutely go into here. They have sales tax set up. I would just call it other and put $12.50, purchase selling. I would add this into the description though too. Then it goes into, should you mark it up? Should you not mark it up? All right, we're gonna get crazy and mark it up. Make our percentages 100. Taxable, no. And I'm going to put in the client description, freight is estimated, and other is sales tax. Just so then the client knows. I do let our clients know that if we have any type of project that's out of state where we don't hold economic nexus, that you let your clients know that it's their own due diligence to submit their use tax. That is something that they would be required to handle, track, and report. So other is sales tax. I don't remember if this is paid or not. Just going to rename that. Oh, there we are. I'm going to put it on appeal also. And we're going to change the quantity, and let's make the sales tax number actually quite a bit bigger. $212. Something to look at the beginning of a project, though, for sure. Okay, but great question. Next question. What do we do if there's a client overpayment on an item? We actually talked a lot about this last week in terms of how are you moving money around. And so let's go to our chairs that to me look like tables. And so this is on proposal, this proposal 1079. We're still on 19th Street. 19th Street has quite a lot of money on account, even though we just refunded them some. So let's go to accounting, money in. I don't remember, 79. So let's say I was having a temporary lapse of judgment and I decided to apply $3,500 to this. Actually, you know what? No, we're going to apply the right amount and then change the price.
So they didn't want to use their client funds for these chairs. They really wanted to pay for them with a check directly. I'm not a fan of undeposited funds, so I'm putting this money into my Chase account since I'm very diversified with my banking needs. Check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to post this payment, and then I'm going to go back into items. Here are my chairs, and the vendor decided for an unknown reason, which never happens anymore, to not charge me the freight. Oh, they came in damaged, and they were very kind and said, don't worry about the freight, no worries. So I went in and I took the freight off of the item. Let's actually pay for this PO. I like to pay for orders, especially on credit cards now, directly through the order, not so much through money out anymore. So that used to always be my go-to. Trying to be more efficient these days. Wells Fargo Visa. Remember, I tried to use the notations to help me identify the account it paid for. So I'm going to say Wells Fargo V for Visa. Had a busy day on the 5th today, blah, blah, blah. My deposit percentages are obviously not in a good place, 1750. Post vendor payment. I didn't put it in my create check entry, so it didn't go into money out. It got directly posted in my ledger. So cancel. And so here I am. And so you could see that this is overpaid. And here it is by $675. So last week we talked a lot about if you're in money in, and if you're receiving funds, do you receive and apply? Do you just receive? And what do you do if there are client overpayments? So if you're moving any money around down here on items, you always want to make sure that you select apply payment to item from funds available. Take out your proposal, and then you can actually filter. Oh, look, they still owe me this design fee and this design fee. So you could always filter by these columns. So when I'm putting money back into client deposit, I really like to filter by this column because it helps me to say, okay, where are my overpayments? And if I'm doing project worksheet cleanup, which is I'm going into reports and I'm running this report, which actually we were just in, but I'm looking to see where do I owe balances for vendors, where do clients owe me balances, or where do I owe clients money. I pull this report, and so this column will show me any balances that the client owes me. So to do some quicker cleanup, if you filter by total balance and bring it to the top, the negatives to the top, or really the negatives to the bottom, then I could see all of the items that have some lingering balances. And so this damaged item we did last week. Here's our $675. Here's a silly $1.36. So something like this, I would just automatically clean up out of client deposit. And somebody had asked that earlier. What do I do? Do I reach out to the client? Do I create a duplicate item? Do I let them know that if there's money on account? And again, it goes back to there's no right or wrong. It's really more or less of how you like to work. So this isn't on a proposal, so I wouldn't attribute any money to it. It's harder to track it in the general ledger. But here are our top 3. And I'm going to, again, payment method, apply payment to items from funds available. I like my check number to be helpful to me. So I put in check number 100522. And I hit post payment and watch right here. So watch funds available. And are you sure? Yep. And then it cleaned up all of those items. So we have to actually do quite a bit of cleanup in this project. It's not. So something like this should come out. So this is an item. I don't know if it has any money on it. It never has. So I would delete it because it's actually just making my item screen look a little bit cluttery. There we go. Well, Sarah, we're basically up against the hour.
Okay, Juliet, great, thank you. If you just want to quickly show the users where they can find the recordings in the account, at the question mark at the top. That would be
Yes.
great.
Thank you. So support, right?
Yep, at the question mark, and then once we get in there, visit our learning hub.
Visit our learning hub, and then all courses, correct?
Yep, that's perfect. You can get in there, or there's a specific Q&A tab for all of the trainings that you're doing as well.
Q&A. Yes. Yeah, and the webinars are always really, really informative and great. Thank you, everyone.
Absolutely.
Really great questions, especially as we prepare for end of the year.
Indeed. Thank you, Julia. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and share my slide. Our last slide here, which is going to be Julia's contact information, should you need to get a hold of her or her team, and the internal support department as well. So Julia's email is julia@newagefinancialconsulting.com. Her phone is listed there and her website. And as always, go ahead and reach out to Studio Designer Support. Their email is support@studiodesigner.com. And you can chat and schedule a phone call with them. All right. Thanks, Julia.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.